Everybody, I'm back. And this time we're going to break down how to set up the domination station to make 150 lineups to attack this or any showdown slate. I'm going to try to answer questions, but for the most part, this is going to be a process-focused breakdown. I'm going to show you my process. How do I set up the DOM? How do I open it? How do I use it? How do I set it up? What rules do we want to make? This is a pretty weird slate. I'm not going to make too many rules, but what rules do we want to make? We'll think of them as we go. If you guys have ideas or questions about rules, I want you to throw those questions to me in the chat. I'm doing my best. When you see me looking over like this, I'm looking at the chat scroller. It's all the way to the right on my screen. And I've got my domination station over here. So you'll see a little bit of head turning action going on. But for the most part, the goal here is to show you the process for setting up games for tonight's NFL single game showdown. Let's do this. I can't wait to attack this one. So let's go. NFL. I promised Draftkings this time. As much as I like doing FanDuel more because it's easier, we're going to do some Draftkings this time. We've got a showdown slate. Giants versus New England. Look at that spread. Very low scoring game. Lots of points for New England. You know what that means? Not a lot of points for the Giants. Okay, let's start the work of getting this set up. So we've opened up the domination station. We've gone to this game. We've got the proper game here, single game contest. Here are basic functions. I don't really change uniques. I'm going to use one unique. You can use two uniques on DraftKings. There's a lot more combinations potentially. We're going to run 150 lineups, but for the purpose of demonstrations, I'll set it to 50 early on because we just don't want to wait. This is a live sort of demo, and every time I'm hitting this number, hitting optimize, I don't want it to take an hour or take a minute and a half while I have to sit here and talk over it. So we'll set it for 50, which is enough, and I'll have to do enough talking over the DOM station running. I'm used to doing these with the ability to pause, so it makes it a little more challenging. All right, now let's get to the basics. This is our tab for all players. This is going to show everybody. Captain is going to be specific for controlling our captain position. A lot of people have had a tough time with figuring out how do you control your captain position. Well, I'll explain it. You want to figure out what percentage of each player you want in the captain spot, and then type that in under exposure minimum next to the player's name. So let's say I want 15% of my lineups to have Tom Brady as the captain. I type 15 over here under exposure minimum, and I'll get 15% minimum of Tom Brady. Say I want 10% Edelman or 10% Josh Gordon. What I do is I type that number here under exposure minimum, and I will force those players to be 10% owned. Right? This is under the captain tab. Say I want another 20% Sony Michel. Now, you might be asking, how do you figure out these numbers? Well, you know, I have some ideas in my head, but we've also got cheat sheets going on. And let's take a look at the DraftKings one. And, you know, Josh has it spelled out pretty well for us right here. Now, I'm going to go higher on Sony Michel than what this number states because I like Sony Michel a little bit more than what Josh does. I'm allowed to. You're allowed to like whoever you like. You don't have to use these numbers. Don't write 25 min, 30% max either. That's a common mistake. Set the exact number that you want. So we're going to try to put in everybody who's a potential winner. This is a weird slate, right? This is a weird slate where there's going to be a lot of ties. We're going to see a lot of Patriots onslaughts. So you don't want to go too crazy on any one player. You want to get a little bit of well-rounded exposure to all of these Patriots players. Patriots defense, hell yes, I want some exposure to them. Let's see where we're at. We have 100% exposure to allocate. 15, 25, 35, 55, 65, 75. Okay, so we're gonna have to add a little bit in some different spots. I'm gonna go through everybody. Another thing I like to do is just start unchecking players I don't want any exposure to. As I see them, Burkhead is out. We're gonna uncheck him. Okay, that's all. So uncheck the players that you don't want exposure to if they haven't been zeroed out by us already. Do you want Daniel Jones as your captain? I'm not going to do it. But if you guys want it, I'm not going to fault you. Get some Slayton, Hilliman. No, I'm going to do right now. For now, I'm going to do 5% exposure to Jacoby Myers. Is there anybody else that I'm even considering as a captain? No. So next I'm going to check and see what my totals are. See where I can raise up some exposure. I've got 15. You know what? Tom Brady is such a spread the football around guy. I can take him up to 20. 20, 40, 60, 70, 80, 85. So I've got 15% more to allocate. Let's go 15 here. I think 10% Patriots defense is enough for me. 5% Jacoby Myers is enough. I mean, do I want to do Hilliman 5%? I really don't. Do I want to do Daniel Jones? Not really. So I'm going to increase Brady to 25%. 25, 40, 50, 70, 80, 90, 95. I've got 5 more percent. I'm going to put another 5 on Sony. Oh, I might change this later. Not calling that my final numbers, but we'll see. We'll see. For now. Okay. Once I've done a little bit of that, let me go check out the flex. You always need to make a couple of modifications. Now, notice when I've jumped over to the flex tab, this is very important. It's very important. Yes. Yeah. James White's in there. I've got him. I've got James White. Brian asking about James White. I've got him for 10% at the moment as a captain. So we jump over to the flex tab. Now remember, I'm controlling my captain exposures using the captain tab and working it exclusively through the exposure min setting right here. I've got 100% of my exposure allocated. So now I'm just going to go to the flex real quick and kind of, I'll make an adjustment or two. Like Evan Ingram's out. We got to uncheck him. Make sure that any players who are marked out or we know are out, we're unchecking them. I'm going to put, let's say, a dislike on Jones. I'm going to put a dislike on a couple of these Giants players that I don't like. And let's run 50 lineups raw. Now, why am I running it raw? I want to see which players are popping like crazy in the flex. I'm already forcing every player in the captain should end up exactly as these numbers say. So let's see and make sure that that happens. Because I've heard a lot of people telling me about how they try to use the domination station and they start to get players they haven't asked for, right? Now take a look at this and I want you to be aware of it. We've got our exposure set, but you see here, Brady and Sony Michel and some of these guys, they came out slightly less, 12 lineups. The reason that happens is because there's no perfect way to divide 25% into 50. Okay, because the number of lineups for 25% would be 12 and a half. So what ends up happening is it will round down on both of these guys. And here's another round down. And what it did instead was it assigned, 5%, it only give you 2. Like you can't get 2.5. It would be 2.5. So it rounds down to 2. And then the extra ones are allocated elsewhere. In this case, Daniel Jones. If I don't want any Daniel Jones, I can put him at a 0. If I set him at 0, some other guy will pop up, or one of these guys will pop up extra. But understand that. And that's how it works. If I did 100 lineups, I wouldn't have that issue because these numbers divide perfectly into 100. Now, just a side note, but we've seen a similar issue to this pretty much in anything we do with percentages, with the rounding issue. And so we're actually making a change to the NFL stacking system where somebody had a great suggestion in DFS Army Slack to write the number of actual lineups rather than the percentage, which will clean some of that rounding error issue up. But here I am. I'm running 100. I'm running 100 lineups. You're going to see that these numbers will be perfect to what we've requested by the end. But the thing here we go. See, perfect, because there's no rounding issue when you're doing 100 lineups. So now I'm going to take a look over at the flex and start to see my exposures. What I have is 2 tabs. I have my flex tab, which shows me my flex exposure, my captain tab, which shows me captain exposure for these same players, and the all tab, which shows me the combination. So as it's currently set up, I have 100% or 97% exposure to Tom Brady between the 25 I have in the captain and the 72% in the flex. So these are players that I have a ton of exposure to. There are players that's not showing up that I want a lot more of. And there are players here that are showing way more than I would possibly have interest in, and players showing way less. So let's start with Sony Michel. I like him more than what I'm getting. So I'm just going to slap a love on that. Put a little love in my heart for Sony Michel. Slap the love on him, right? I'm also looking at some players I don't want a ton of exposure to, like Cody Latimer. He's popping a little too much. Going to set a max of 5% for him for now. Alderic Rosas, 5%. That's about right. Darius Slayton, let's see what happens once I have this 5%er set. Daniel Jones, 50%. That's more than I want. I'm going to set him to 20% because I actually would prefer Giants Onslaught lineups, and I'm not getting those at the moment. A little too much Helleman, a little too much Daniel Jones. They're showing up together. I'm gonna lower this down to 50 because each run is taking a little bit longer than I'd like it to. But for the purpose of doing this as part of a demonstration, but this is how you run it. I want to see who's popping each time I make an adjustment, then I make another adjustment. So we've already talked about a lot of these players, but now you're seeing them pop into lineups. Now I might do some rules here. For example, let's start making rules. If Tom Brady is captain, then stacked with no less than 2 of Edelman, White, Gordon, Myers, let's see if there's any other Patriots players. Yeah, we can add Lacoste in there too. I almost might do no less than 3 of, just to force these onslaughts. Like, I don't have a problem with this. I think I'm going to do it. Let's do that rule. No less than 3 of. I never do a no less than 3 of rule, but this is a special situation. We can also do some negative rules, but I'm going to leave this one rule in place. Let's take a look. Let's take a look down here again. Let's take a look at who our captains are and think about if-then statements we could potentially make for any of these other captains. There aren't many. Hilliman, that's a little more Hilliman exposure than I want. So first of all, what I'm going to do, because I don't want him, I'm just going to put a hate on him. I want to get him more in line with other players in this price range. So that'll reduce his That'll reduce his instances of showing up in lineups, right? I'm going to set this now to 50 for demonstration purposes, do it a little quicker. I don't mind using a little randomization, by the way, guys. Use 5%. It's all good. Kyle Marley's got a 10-player pool for 40 lineups. Kyle, that's really, really a slim player pool, but I don't hate it. But it's really slim. Let's see where we end up with, because some of these guys I'm going to have to continuously reduce, reuse, and uncycle. So Solomon, talking about Patriots defense for captain. The answer is yes. Yes, I do have 10% exposure to Patriots defense. I love Patriots defense as a captain for this game. The Giants are going to be railroaded, most likely, in this spot. They're going to be railroaded. So we want to try to make Patriots onslaughts. Now, Helleman, how the fuck did he get into captain? Let me reduce that. I mean, okay, 2%, whatever. But when he's captain, I don't want Daniel Jones. I guess you can get some 2 Giants lineups going. Rhett Ellison. This is, yeah. Yeah, here's your onslaught, New England. Hilliman and Jones seem to want to be showing up together. There's one with a 1 Cody Latimer. Hilliman and Jones. Rhett Ellison, just 1 Giant. So these are your onslaught lineups. Hunter has a great question. How do you handle it when a guy's question? Now, just so you know, Burkhead is out. So it's not questionable right now, but that situation comes up a lot. How do you handle questionable players? What I do is, I might prep a full run, assuming one way, and then prep a whole nother run with a file ready to go in case that person is out. So I'll have 2 situations queued up. No, he's out. He's out. He's been ruled out. So yeah, he's ruled out already. So that's why we're very, very excited about Sony Michel. Sony Michel's usage changes dramatically when Rex Burkhead isn't there. It's like his, James White is used the same way no matter what. But it's Sony Michel who prospers without Rex Burkhead. So, as I said, in the flex, we want to control our exposures. This week, we want to really control our exposures to Giants players, not get too much of any one of them. Let's go 20% Rhett Ellison. I really like Ellison's chance to be the nuts, I guess. If he just catches a couple of passes for his price, and the Giants, the rest of them don't do anything. Golden Tate's going to be out there. So we don't want too much of any of these guys, but a little bit. Giants defense is a no for me. I mean, 1% is fine. 1% is fine there. Aldaric Rosas, even 4% is a bit much. But we're getting to where we want to be with some of these exposures. I want to be at about 20% Jacoby Myers. He's starting for the Patriots. I'm going to raise up his projection a little bit. Max is asking 3 New England RBs in the same lineup. Listen, it's a lot of New England RBs. I consider James White more of a wide receiver, though. So if you're saying James White, Sony Michel, and Brandon Bolden all in the same lineup together, crazier things have happened. It's worth 1 lineup out of your 150. White gets a little bit of a boost, but it was Sony Michel who got the boost last game, Hunter. If you look at his returns, Sony Michel, they started throwing to him, which is really cool. But I love both guys. White and Michel here. Great. Very high floors. Michel I like more because he's got that touchdown equity. He's going to be getting the football at the goal line. There's James White just in every single lineup. So there it is. Now, I don't want too much exposure to any one player, so I'm going to, set some limits. Tom Brady, I mean, I pretty much want him in most lineups, so I'm having a hard time foreseeing, especially with how affordable everybody is on this slate, that there will be a perfect lineup that doesn't have Tom Brady in it. I mean, it could happen, but I'm not super expecting it to happen. Want a lot of Patriots. Rhett Ellison, I got a max on him. Nuge, sure. I don't even need to. I'm not doing a stack with Gordon this week with Daniel Jones, because he could wind up in the perfect lineup without doing a whole lot, or without really even throwing to it. Like, he could run for a touchdown. He might just score like 9 points, but that's good enough in a game like this where most of the scoring happens with the defense, or this game has a lot of outcomes. We don't normally see this type of a crap game as a single game slate. And here are just some turds that we're looking to, hope that they miraculously become the nuts. But we don't have to do too much of this punting, because we can afford whoever we want. So let's do another run. Like, this isn't the type of game where it's very likely that, that some tight end, some third string tight end is going to be in the nuts. That's not what's going to probably happen here. I mean, it could, but just get a couple shares of that. We don't need to spend a lot of our lineups doing that. What I want is for most of my lineups to be 5 Patriots and 1 player from the Giants. See, I'm still getting too much Hilliman, so I'm going to reduce him down to $8. I'm still getting too much Daniel Jones, so I'm going to reduce him down to 11. I want to try to experiment and see if reducing these will reduce the number of players from the Giants that I get in any individual lineup, because I want to try to have it so that most of my lineups only have 1 Giant player in them. Christian Sosa asks, how bad the weather will be. Do you think it makes sense to have both starting RBs on most of my teams? I can't recommend putting any Giants player in 80% of your lineups, including Hilliman. Yes, he's going to get a lot of touches. He's got a reasonable floor. Weather, yes, John Rios is correct. Weather, you don't have to worry about weather that much. I like having running backs in the game, and I like Hilliman. Don't get me wrong, because he's a running back. But yeah, see, this is too little. So we're going to try it again at 9. But I like Hilliman, don't get me wrong. But I don't want to put him in every lineup, because I don't know which of these Giants players really has a shot of being that nut play. I don't know. I don't want 38% Golden Tate. 1 or 2 Giants in any lineup, that's plenty. Guys, have you used the domination station? Do you have questions about how to control the captain or the flex spot? I mean, you're watching me do this live, right? And, if you have questions about like what these numbers are that I'm putting in, or why I'm making these adjustments the way that I am, ask them. This is the chance. But I'm trying to look through these and make sure that I'm not getting too much of any look at how these lineups look now. Onslaught. We're getting a lot of Onslaught lineups. Just 1 player from the Giants. That's what I'm kind of looking for. Here's a 2-pack. Onslaught. We're getting a lot of these Onslaughts, and we're mixing and matching through the various combinations. And that's the way we want to approach this. This is the kind of game. Now, here's the deal. What if the Giants aren't dominated and they actually make a game of it? Well, the first thing is you should be betting it. If you think, Stephen, I was just explaining how to control the captain, but I'll show you again. Stephen asks, how do you control the captain spot? Okay, check it out. Watch closely. This tab right here, captain. Okay? Now, I showed this earlier in the video. You go through the tab, and every player that you want to show up in your captain position, you place a number on their exposure min equal to the percentage of that player that you want as your captain. Okay, so I said I wanted 25% Brady, 15% Edelman, 10% Gordon, 25% Michelle, 10% James White, etc., etc., 10% Pat's defense. And if you look here, I got just about that. Now you'll note that these two guys are not, or this one guy, Daniel Jones, is not one of the players that I selected. And the reason he shows up is because I'm using 50 lineups here. There's no perfect division for 50 lineups with a 5% of 50 is 2.5. So what ends up happening is that lineup becomes open and it gets assigned to whoever's the best value. Stephen, I hope that helps explain how to do it. You just set the exposure min on the players that you want. If you want to adjust the captain projection, under the captain tab, you would change the projection. It's important to note that as of this moment, using the like, love button, uncheck, or lock does not work for captain. This works for the main player pool. Okay. Hunter asks, do you ever split 150 into 3 groups running different scenarios? I've been doing that lately and it triples the work, but it's worked well. Yeah, you can do that. I tend to just use the captain and flex rules now. I think you can create most of the scenarios you want, but I don't have any issue. I could see a lot of benefit to running the tool like that tonight. And Hunter says he's got 2 scenarios, one with a New England pass onslaught and a bad weather run scenario. Sure, definitely do that. Because you don't want to have a rule this week where it's like forcing Brady with like multiple pass I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. If you have the rule in play where you force Brady with multiple pass catchers, I don't understand how you not have like these running back. You just basically want to load up on the Pats. That's why if you're looking at what I'm doing here, I mean, look at these lineups. New England, look how much salary it's leaving on the table. Giants, 1 player. If you go down to the bottom, like if I made a lot of lineups, you'd start to see some, 48K on the table. I don't have any issue leaving a lot of money on the table for this tournament. 49.8. So if I made 100 lineups, you'd see even more of those lineups where you're leaving lots of salary on the table. Got to find some path to uniqueness when you're doing this, because if not, you're just going to tie with everyone. So I'm running 100, and what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to concentrate on the exposures that are showing up. From getting too much of a player, I want to reduce that player. From getting too little, I want to raise up their projection. Like I said, I raised up Jacoby Myers before. I really like him today. Why not? I think he's a little sneaky, a little low owned, and I'm trying to get any exposure to low owned sneaky players as that I can. So, I'm going to look through this as I continue to run this tool and run it a bunch more times until I finally get the distribution looking the way I want it to. And a lot of what I've done here is I've just reduced all of the the projections for all of the Giants players to the point where they're really rarely showing up 2 in a single lineup. That doesn't mean that 2 Giants players in a lineup isn't going to be the win, but I still think, even as obvious as this approach seems, I don't think that most lineups are going to look like this, where it's just 1 player from the Giants tonight. I think that gives me a little hope of being a little bit unique. Could be wrong. Could be wrong. Could be wrong. But that's what I'm hoping. Not to get too many of these Giants players in any one lineup. 1 or 2 max. Now, if you want to be silly for the millie, then you can run some Giant Onslaught lineups or some lineups where you have a few more Giant players, or try to find some level where, some place, somehow to do something unique and different. But do that when you're making 150. Don't do that in the one lineup, okay? Because there's way too much of that going on. Guys, if you're going to make one lineup, all right, I already did this. I did this on the previous video. I showed you how to make one lineup, right? Let's make it high floor. You know what I'm saying? Don't be silly in your one lineup. And when you make one lineup, don't enter it in the 10, where am I? Don't enter it in the 150,000 entrant contest. If you're going to make one lineup, let me show you what you'd enter one lineup into. We're doing a showdown. How about a 400 person contest? How about a 125 person I checked out the Survivor thing. I don't think I loved the format. I think there was something about it that bothered me, but I have to take another look. But, how about trying to beat, it's basically a 50-50. Want to make one lineup? Put Brady, put Sony, put Edelman. These are high floor players. Put Pat's defense in there. Get your, you can put Nuge and then you can hill him in it or do something like that. We can get Rhett Ellison, basically punt this spot and then finish it off with, Jimmy White. That's a single lineup. Kevin Ferguson has a really good question here. Kevin asks, what would be the strategy for the 20 max? 20 max is basically the same. Let's go back over to the Dom station. 20 max is basically the same as 150, except number one, I would increase the number of uniques from 1 to 2, and I would decrease the amount of captains that you're using. So what I want you to do when you're making just 20 is tighten up that player pool. Take some stands on some players. It doesn't have to be only in the captain, but instead of taking like some long shots or take stands here, you might go, all right, I'm just going 100% on Brady. I'm assuming he's in the perfect lineup one way or the other. Okay. You might say, I'm going all in on Sony Michel. I think he's in the perfect lineup today. Okay. Lock up a couple spots. So understand what the strategy is when you're making just 20 and even 150. The fewer variables that you have to deal with, the higher your chances of hitting the perfect score. So the way you win one of these, I don't like to promote it too much because this same approach will cause you to lose all of your money when you're not winning it. But the correct approach to this is to go all in on a couple of spots. We have 6 on DraftKings. We have 6 positions to fuck around with. Okay, every one of these, when you do the math on 6 positions and you kind of start to figure out, okay, I have X amount of options for X amount of positions, and I can mix them out. There are morons in social media who say, well, if I was making 150 lineup, of course I'm going to win a contest. I already know those people don't know math because there are tens of thousands of potential combinations for even a contest like this. In a main slate NFL, there are many, many hundreds of thousands of combinations, maybe many millions. So to think that you can build 150 and cover all scenarios is a little bit silly. When you're cutting it all the way down to 20, it's even sillier. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to reduce the number of variables that we have to scroll through in order to hit the perfect lineup, because unfortunately, no one is good enough to just pop in 6 players and know who are the highest scoring 6 combination going to be in any given night. I don't know it. No one else does. If they knew it, they wouldn't tell you. So what do? We're working with probabilities. What are the most probable situations? We try to set some rules so that these probabilities become more likely to hit in our lineup. So, certain rules, like, for example, my rule of Brady captain with no less than 3 pass catchers. Why? Because, the thought is if Brady is doing well enough to be the captain, he's probably throwing to a bunch of players from his team and they're probably doing well too. And if one of those players isn't the captain, but it's Brady, that means he spread the football around really well. So my goal in a game where I think it's low scoring my goal in a game when I think it's even low scoring, especially, is listen. I don't think Josh Gordon needs to put up a 25 to be in the perfect lineup. I think if he catches a touchdown and gets you 12, he's in the perfect lineup. Same thing with Edelman. If he catches 6 or 7 passes for 80 yards, even no touchdown, he's probably in the perfect lineup. Tate or Slayton? Dominique Laster asks. I'm going to go with Tate. Tate is a preferred player. Slayton is a deep ball guy. He's fine. I like him too. Going to mix in both of them, but I think Golden Tate has a better shot of getting some underneath work, some crossing work. Giants are more likely to be successful in that area than maybe throwing deep against Stephon Gilmore with Clayton. So with Slayton. So, I don't mind either guy. I like the wide receivers for the Giants in general because actually above Hilliman, the wide receivers will catch a couple of passes even in a terrible game. And that'll get him some points. More than none. Yeah, Tate coming in, 18%? Where's Slayton right now? He's at 13%. And I'll raise these numbers up, like 15. I don't want too much of any of these guys. So, yeah, that's about right. I might go 10.2 here. That kind of thing. I don't want too much of these Giants. I'm trying to create Patriots Onslaught lineups, and I'm hoping that that's the right way, that's how it ends up. Marky Mark's asking about Red Ellison. Yeah, we like Red Ellison. Absolutely. I don't think he's got a ceiling of 20 points. I think Red Ellison's best case scenario is, 8, 9 points. But that's fine for that price, assuming that the Patriots are onslaughting like I think they will be. Ellison just opens up whoever the hell you want to play in that lineup. And if he gets above a 0, you're already a winner. I'm setting controls in certain players, no controls on other players. I might raise these up. These are not final numbers. I'm not submitting this. I'll keep messing with this after I shut this stream down, but I'm trying to do this as a Q&A as well. But when you're ready to enter your lineups, now, again, we've gone through everything. We've set a rule. Normally, I have a lot more rules to set. I'm just not thinking of too many rules I really want for this one because I think it's going to be so low scoring that correlations don't matter as much. Like normally I might set a rule like if it uses Sony Michel, I don't want Brandon Bolden or James White. I'm not doing that rule. I don't mind those players together because I think it's going to be low scoring across the board. So not going to do that. The only rule I made was set Tom Brady as captain with at least 3 pass catchers. And that will create Patriots onslaughts even if you didn't want to. The only question is, did I forget any of their pass catchers? No, we got Edelman, White, Gordon, Myers, and Lacoste. If you want more Patriots defense in your lineups, you could raise that up. Go to 12 from 11.5. You'll start to see here. Now I'm going to get more than that, 38% I had in that last run. Pat's defense is probably going to be higher owned than they should be. Yeah, Hunter mentions Izzo. Izzo, playable as well. He's not somebody I don't think I'm going to get much exposure to Izzo. He's here. I guess I'll add him to that stack. Izzo seems to be the less likely. He was the less likely of the tight ends. Can't have two lineups. Thank you, Hunter. Marky Mark. What's up, my man? I use one unique for these contests. If you're doing DraftKings, you can do 2 uniques. On FanDuel, I do 1 unique. There are fewer combinations. Sometimes I'll just go 1 unique on like I probably prefer going 1 unique. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll do one unique for like a bigger contest and then two uniques for like for a smaller contest and then two uniques for like a massive one where I'm trying to get like a little more silly with it. So let's say I was doing the $10 entry one and then the 50-cent mini max. I might do one unique for the 10 and then go two uniques for the mini max. Just to shits and gigs. Furkan wants to know how to export the lineup to Draftkings. He's tried multiple. All right, here we go. Wait, before that, Julie Fresh asks, any love for Nugent tonight? Sure, why not? Yeah, Nugent's fine. It's going to be a little windy out there, but yeah, sure. Of course we like Nugent. We like the Patriots kicker. Furkan, how do you export lineups to DK? I've tried multiple times with the how, but it just doesn't work. All right, let's try it. Okay, you ready? Watch. Download the lineups. See right there? Save the file. It shows right here on the bottom of your screen, right? When you go to DraftKings, you click on lineups. There's a button here to upload them. So what we want to do is put the lineups we just made onto DraftKings. Boom. Now they're in DraftKings on my lineups page. Okay, check it out. DraftKings moving a little slow today. Maybe while I'm live streaming, my internet is being taxed a little bit and it's moving slow. But they are in my lineups page. You always need to save it as a .csv file, never an Excel file. Always .csv, very, very important. Well, I can't go to my lineups page because DraftKings is sucking balls right now, but there we go. Okay. Now, how do I enter the lineups? Because I just uploaded them. Oh, they are? Okay. Yeah, because I'm like, what the hell's slowing this thing down? Save it as a CSV, guys. Check it out. This is the magic. Watch the magic happen. You ready? No. Of course, this is for the this is the wrong contest. Great. Forgot to click the magic button for the showdown. I'm going to go to the showdown. I'm going to find the contest I want to enter. Now, there's a beautiful little function over here. Enter all. We've now entered 100 of the 150. Now, Furkan, you might have been having some issues because that video is for editing your lineups, not for the initial upload. The initial upload process is so simple that I didn't think to make a tutorial for it. That was it. You upload it, then you click on your contest and hit enter all. The edit process is next level like stuff. So if I want to edit those lineups, you know what? I have you guys here. Fuck it. Dominique asked, do I like FanDuel or DraftKings better? I like both sites. FanDuel has its advantages, and so does DraftKings. FanDuel for single game contests is easier to win, but you're much more likely to wind up in a whole pile of ties. Will, when creating 150 lineups, how do you go about determining exposures? Thinking about maxing the 5 cent. It's a 5 cent, not a 50 cent. Will, on FanDuel. Yeah, I mean, I go about it exactly as I did in the start of this video. We have coach's notes here that give you an idea of how much exposure you might want to any player. And then I'm going to adjust that based on my personal takes on the slate. So I'll start, this is what this sheet is for. It gives you an idea of some exposures, some captain exposures, some potential flex exposures that you might want. I have another system I use where I like to look at prop bets as well. I'm not going to do that right here, but when I'm trying to figure out how much of a player like Sony Michel I might want exposure to, I might say to myself, you know what? If Sony Michel is in the perfect lineup, let's see if our prop bets thing is working. Let me just do that on the other screen here. But I might say to myself, what are the odds that Sony Michel scores a touchdown on the slate? Buffalo on the beat has never done more than 5 lineups. Dude, I don't think I've ever done less than 150, or it's been years since I played that way. Although I make most of my money, my profit, off of my 5 or 6 handcrafted lineups. So don't think that you need to attack mass multi-entry. It's a very volatile way to play DFS. And more often than not, you lose money doing that. So I make most of my money handcrafting a few lineups, like my King of the Beach win this weekend and my cash lineup. These are all handcrafted line. I'm not using the Dom station for it. I'm using essentially the core players that I put out in my Geeks Picks cheat sheet every single week. And you've seen the lineups and you've seen the players. You saw it in the review. They're exactly who I had marked as core or all or talked up in my Players Club Saturday podcast. So you guys are seeing exactly who I don't win every single week. Of course not. What I'm trying to do is explain a lot of the times how the tools work, what I'm looking for. And then you can throw in your thoughts and your approaches. This is football. We all watch it. We all have access to the same data. I use DFS Army tools. It's all the same tools that I don't use anything else. The Statsational model has been awesome. I've been using that this year. I've got the research station with everything I need right in front of me. So I also use the sports book from Draftkings because I like to look up player props. And let me show you what I mean. We have player prop numbers on dfsarmy.com as well, but I'll show you. It's in a nice, easy format here. So when I look at, they always give me that every time I log in. When I look at the NFL props, take a look at this. And I go to the player props. What are the props for somebody to score? Sony Michel is minus 162. That means he's got about a 65% chance of scoring a tutty. White is the next highest chance. Edelman, Gordon. Burkhead's not even playing. So you could take this out and add some of this plus 210, which is about 30% to Michel and White. So these two guys have a very, very high percentage chance of scoring a touchdown. White, almost 50%. Now, when you look at these implied probabilities, guys, this is very important. You can start to figure out your own percentages of exposure. Now, let's start with John Hilliman, who is a Giant. Let's say John Hilliman is plus 325 to score a touchdown, right? Hang on. So Hilliman, plus 325. That's an implied probability of about 20%. So if I'm looking for an exposure for this guy, 20%. The same and equal to his exposure. Now, I could go higher than that because Hilliman could be in the perfect lineup without scoring a touchdown. But he's got a 20% chance implied probability according to this line right here. So you could bet it of scoring a touchdown. Now, I don't love the DraftKings lines. I like I have a better source for this. Let me jump to it. Hang on. I'm going to bring it over. Give me a second, guys, and ask more questions. In the meantime, Buffalo on the beat. Buffalo. He tried playing cash games, but both times I didn't have the guy that went for 40-plus points, and I missed the cash line. I don't know why people think cash games are safe. They are safe. The reason you should have been on the 40-plus point guy. So the question is, why weren't you? That's what you need to ask yourself. Why wasn't I on the right play? They're definitely safer because your odds are 50-50. But why weren't you on the 40-point guy? Think about that. Like, what were you missing that the whole field was on this guy? If the whole field is on a guy for 40, 50% exposure ownership to the point where he's winning everybody the cash games and you weren't on him, what did you do wrong? What information did you not have at your fingertips that 50% of the field did have? That's what you got to ask yourself. All right, let me open up a really cool tool. You guys are going to love this. All right, these guys, we work with them. And again, we have a tool like this, very similar, but it's not quite perfected at DFS Army. So I'm going to show you a different version of it. A little bit sort of more perfected version of one of these tools. We have the same tool or something very similar at DFS Army in the Beat the Bookie site. NFL player models. Okay. This will get us an even better. And I like to use this to compare against the Draftkings sheet. So right here we show, for example, James White as a plus 130 to score a touchdown. Let's see if this page loaded. Oh, the wonders of live internet. Okay, here we go. If you didn't have McCaffrey when he went for 50, then you shouldn't have been playing cash games. McCaffrey was Mark Core, DFS Army. If you didn't have him, you done fucked it up. Like, there was no reason to play a cash game without Christian McCaffrey in it. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Don't play cash games. Like you said, don't play cash games if you don't have the right information at your fingertips. Like, if you're a DFS Army subscriber, I don't know everybody who's here who's chatting. If you're a DFS Army subscriber, you would have known to be on Christian McCaffrey because he was Mark Core, and you couldn't optimize anything without him. But if you don't have that kind of tool at your fingertips, then you might be in trouble. Do or die, Gordon or White. I'm going to go with James White. I don't know. I think James White with Sony Michel is a safer cash floor than, like Sony Michel with Gordon. Furkan, you know very well that I think I've only done one core play at wide receiver all season, and it was Mike Thomas last week. So, like, if you played cash games last week without Michael Thomas in your lineup on DraftKings, that shows a severe lack of knowing what you're doing. Like, that was one of the most obvious plays all year. Because the guy gets 10 targets and it was 6,600. He gets 10. I didn't know he was going to go for 2 touchdowns, but I knew he had a high floor. A lot of people did. He was very heavily owned in cash. And the other way you can know who to play in cash games is just to sort by the ownership projection. Okay, here we go. Our tool is live. Let's take a quick look at James White. I want to see what chance he has of scoring a touchdown. So check this out. Under, over. So over 0.5. Essentially, this is the odds that he will score a touchdown. And you could bet this, right? This is why this is better than the DraftKings number. DraftKings wants to suck you in. They say plus 130 to score a touchdown. Well, if you get a real book, it's plus 155 to score a touchdown. So plus 155 is an implied probability of 40%. Okay, plus 130 would be 44%. It's close, but when you see a real line where you can bet for or against it, it's not quite as good. So they're giving James White about a 40%. If you remove some of the fluff in there, 35% chance to score a touchdown. Okay. So if you wanted to limit him, now you don't need to do that, especially on DraftKings, because White can get there without scoring a touchdown. But a player like Sony Michel, or a player that's going to be touchdown dependent, you can use the implied probability of them scoring a touchdown a lot of times to give you an idea of what kind of exposure you should take to that guy. And again, that's more of a FanDuel rule than a DraftKings rule. I mean, I'm going to prefer Tate, but same shit. Use one or the other. Neither one of them is the highest floor play. Both of them are GPP plays. Your high floor play is either just completely punt it with Rhett Ellison, take the 0, and hope he gets a catch or two. Could happen. Yes, it is. I always MME the showdowns too. There is a way. You can attack them in cash games too, though. We have some members who go balls to the wall cash and really crush these showdowns. There's a strategy to it. Again, it's a little bit what I'm talking about. The high floor lineup. That's the strategy. You can build one. Where am I? There's our lineups page. We got all our lineups in here. But going through, just look at the touchdown props. Even Myers, look at this. Jacoby Myers. This one's really interesting. Let's see if we have a touchdown prop over 260. So a guy who's going to be very low owned. Now, this is where you want to really look at the props and understand them, guys. Check this out. Jacoby Myers is getting a plus 260 to score a touchdown prop. That's 27%. If Jacoby Myers scores a touchdown, let's say he's about a 27% implied probability. Okay? He's going to be owned at maybe 16% on the slate. So if I'm running lineups, that I see that, I say, you know what? Let me get a little more Jacoby Myers exposure. All right, I got him at actually I got him at the right, but you want to be. He's got a 27% chance of scoring a touchdown according to the numbers. You can bet it. Let's say you think he doesn't have that. Bet it. One way or the other, you make lots of money if you're that good. But I just go with what the odds say. So if the odds say Jacoby Myers has a 30% chance of scoring a touchdown in this game, I want some exposure. Brandon Bolden plus 350. He's probably going to be in the nuts if he scores that touchdown. Plus 350. They have it at plus 480. So I'm going to trust the real number, plus 480, because, again, why is this a more real number? Because you can bet against it. DraftKings only lets you bet the over. So they makes the money on it, right? They're only giving you plus 360. If you're a sharp gambler, you wouldn't bet that. But at plus 480, they're saying 17% chance. You reduce some of that fluff out of there. They're giving Brandon Bolden a 15% chance or so. They're saying 17% chance. You reduce some of that fluff. I don't know. I just turned on. That's going to be down to 15%. That means you should probably have 15% exposure to Brandon Bolden in case he gets that touchdown. What's up, everyone? Kevin Allen here. Yikes. Okay, so yeah, he's very frustrating, Hunter, and this is only for MME. Yeah, this is only for MME. That's right. This is what burns you in a single game contest. I never need to worry about him in a tournament. But in a single game contest, you need a couple shares just in case he does that, because you're trying to beat out 130,000 other lineups. So how do you do it? You got to have some level of turds in your lineup on occasion, because sometimes a turd catches a touchdown or runs for one. Jeremy Pringle broke the slate open the other night. There have been a few slates in a row like that. There have been a few. So again, once I'm going through all of this and I'm like, holy shit, Brandon Bolden has a freaking, I don't even think I have any Bolden exposure here, right? Now I find out he's got about a 15% chance scoring a touchdown. What do I have to do? I've got to raise up that projection so they get some exposure to this guy. So like this next run, hopefully I'll get a little bit of Brandon Bolden. And if I don't, I'll raise him up again. See, he's not popping. I know. Or there he is. So I know I need to get a little bit of Brandon Bolden exposure because so now I'll get some. I'll put a higher projection on him to the point where I get some. And I'll make a decision how much am I really comfortable with of all these players before I finalize this stuff. Byron. Wait, who's Jeremy Pringle? No, I'm thinking of Jeremy Sprinkle, the tight end for I don't know. Charlie Gerhardt's got Byron Pringle on his season-long team for this week. He's excited for him. I'm a little worried about Pringle if Tyreek Hill comes back. Let's see. So, changing it to 3.5 got me 7%. Again, I want to get a little bit closer to his touchdown potential. But I can do that for every single one of these players. I can go to Matt Lacoste and try to figure out what's his chance of scoring a touchdown. Here we go. Over 500. Guys, this is how you figure out. He's about the same. That 500, it's about a 10, 12, 13. The implied probability is 16, but again, we have to remove some of the fluff because these sites don't do things for free. So, 12% chance for Matt Lacoste for scoring a touchdown. Jeremiah Dowd is talking about Washington. Man. Is there a player named Washington in this game, or what are we talking about? Buffo is looking back to the game where Zeke played against the Dolphins. That was a tough one because while he was a cash game play, we knew the risk with Zeke that their team would take such a massive lead. He wasn't a play over Christian McCaffrey. But we knew the risk that if Dallas is smashing them, they might just bring in the backup, especially with Zeke still kind of coming off that injury. So it didn't work. It didn't work. That was a tough one. We talked about it a lot on all the podcasts and all the breakdowns. How much Zeke could we afford? And he got vultured for all of his touchdowns. He got a lot of yards. He ran wild, but he didn't score the touchdowns. Shit happens. But he was playable in cash, and he didn't kill your cash lineup. Oh, yeah, Sprinkle. Yeah, the Washington. Yeah, that's right. The Washington tight end. Is he from Washington? I guess that's where he's from. Sprinkle. We want players in our cash lineups that are going to get a ton of touches. This week, you'll see the core sheet that I have put out. Names of running backs that are going to be out there every single play. You might not even be thinking of them, but they're going to be on the field every single play. They're going to get a bunch of targets in the passing game, and that's good enough. For 20 max, is it better to handcraft? I don't know. That's up to you, Kev. I will generate those lineups. I handcraft 5 or 6 lineups every single week to attack regular games. I'll handcraft like a cash lineup, of course. I don't use the domination station to make cash lineups or to build 3 or 4 primary lineups for my hybrid entries, for my high dollar entries. I use the optimizer when referring to NFL in particular. I use the optimizer to attack tournaments with game stacks and team stacks and using all the stacking options. You have a ton of control as a user when you do that. I don't just click the button. I don't just click it. Oh, okay. Let me put that in. Free money. Now you could just click the button in other sports. NASCAR, NBA, a little bit. Trying to think what else. Yeah, Jacob Johnson, Hunter. I mean, that's pretty deep diving. Probably not going there. But if you want to use them, 1 or 2%. One lineup or 2. I use an implied probability calculator, Marky Mark. you could just type in implied probability calculator on Google and one will pop up for you. You need to know, if you're ever going to gamble, sports gamble, you must know the implied probabilities. If you don't know that stuff, never ever bet a money line. Everything in your brain, if you're going to sports gamble, should be probabilities. As a matter of fact, everything in your brain when you play DFS should be probabilities too. So try to think in probabilities all the time. Don't think in absolutes. There's a probability that the Giants don't lose this game. It's about 10% that this game goes completely wackadoodle and the Giants don't lose. They win. If you think the probability for the Giants winning is less than 10%, like that it's 5%, then you can bet the money line on the Patriots without the spread. What's the money line? You're going to ask me a tough question. Let's see. Let me see if I can get you a money line here. Here it is. So right now, the money line for the Patriots is minus 1,125. That means you've got to put up $1,125 to make back your 1,125 plus an extra hundy to make a unit. Okay? Minus 1,125 is an implied probability of 92%. Okay? So as a sports gambler, you would have to say, Kevin, I calculate the chance that the Patriots win tonight at 98%. You want to get about 5% value minimum on any bet that you do. So if you give the Patriots a 97% chance of winning tonight, you can bet the money line at minus 125. Now, I don't bet minus 1,125 money lines. But if you start to think of things, so they're giving the Giants at plus 720 a 12%-ish chance of winning the game. So as you're attacking this tournament, if you say, hey, fuck it, I want to be on that 12% side, because if that does happen, and I know it's only going to happen 1 out of 10 times, but if this is that 1 out of 10 where it happens, I'm going to win the tournament. Then build some lineups for that scenario where you have the Giants doing well. That's, where Hilliman is doing really well, where, more than 1 or 2 Giants players are in your lineup. Giants defense is in there doing their thing. But I wouldn't build more than 10% of my lineups that way. So going back to something that Hunter said before, not this one, but about building individual runs with the Dom station. Let's say you're doing 150. You could build 130 for the Patriots Onslaught, and then you could build 20 lineups with more of a Giants kind of stay in the game approach. Giants keep it competitive. A better mix of players from both teams. Then if that 10% scenario happens, you'll be positioned to beat it. So, all right, I'm going to wrap it up here, guys. Unless there's any more questions, I'm looking over real quick, 4:59. It's been a few minutes since the last question. So I hope this helped. I know this was long. It was long for me too. But I hope this helped everybody get an approach going for tonight's game. I'm going to get to work here, finishing up my actual lineups to attack this thing with. I hope that I can come back. I wish I knew how to splice these things, because if I ever won one of these after doing a video, I'd love to splice in the picture of the winning lineup in there. It always feels cool. But hopefully if it's not me, it's one of you guys who've spent this hour with me going over, learning how to do DFS the right way, how to attack a showdown the right way, how to use the domination station optimizer, and how to use odds and probabilities to help decide your exposures. Good luck on this one, everyone.